So why use mobile tech? For those of you who already done it in the past, you already know why to use it. If you've been using paper, you probably already know why you should be using it too. We started as point-in-time count admins for regions in Quincy and Brockton, Massachusetts, and we had that task at one point of doing the paper data collection, and then taking all those stacks of paper, 1 o'clock in the morning, piling them up, results, and we have to start rekeying that data into, we use Excel-based spreadsheets just to make it life easier, trying to understand what people were saying, what they were writing. There was gaps of like gender, for example, where people didn't put anything in, and we're like, well, we got the person's name, so Frank, okay, we'll assume that Frank is a male, but then there's other names where you can't make those leaps. And so it was a frustrating process. It was sloppy. We knew there was a better way, and mobile tech was definitely growing by leaps and bounds, and so we decided to develop a mobile app. So our first mobile app, this was a little bit really relatively simple as far as functionality goes. It's more of a form than anything, but it did have the GPS capabilities built in. HUD saw that work was as innovative, and we ended up working with HUD for a couple of years. They picked up the work, and the HUD point-in-time counting app was kind of born from there. The one issue that we had was that the data collection side of things, as far as where data is stored, couldn't be stored by HUD because of fair housing law. And so that was too much of a leap for communities to take on their own. And so we parted ways with HUD for that, but with a lot of lessons learned, and we were able to work with a great peer group in the process of HUD TAs and staff at HUD, including William Snow, that helped us have a better product and really understand what we're trying to accomplish. And so from there, we moved on, and the Counting Us app was born from that. The name Counting Us, as you might decipher, counting people that are just like ourselves, and just, they happen to be in a different living situation than we are. And the goal is to try to get them to be in a positive living situation. So we're counting our brothers and sisters, our mothers or fathers, and friends, and people that are part of our neighborhood. So that's the Counting Us concept, and we hope that you'll find the same when you're out there in the streets working with people, that these are our neighbors. So the idea from there is, like, why do we want to do this? Well, we realized that training was easier. We could actually have people go out and use the technology beforehand, and we could see the data coming in. It really relieves stress for the count admins, because if you know something works because you've seen it working, months ahead of the actual count, your tension level just drops, because you just know that this is going to fly. As far as the use of technology, like, well, what happens if something goes wrong? We have that covered. So, and how do we have that covered? Well, we have everything. Again, we've been doing this for a long time too, but our stack, which is basically our code environment, you have a native app that runs on your phone. So it would have to require everyone's phones to go down for that side of things. The surveys can be stored locally. That's one thing too. So, if by chance Amazon Web Services were to go down, which it doesn't, it's cloud-based infrastructure, and every Fortune 500 company uses some kind of hosting, cloud-based hosting typically. And we tend to lean on the same. So you don't have to worry about that side of things. We've got all the redundancies that we need there. And then, the idea that leading up to everything, you are training them as the volunteers, but you're also training yourself and your own internal team. So come night of the count, you're just ready. As far as making life easier, it's easy because it happens in real time. You're seeing the surveys come in. If someone forgets to put something in, you can watch it and you can reach out instantaneously. One thing to be prepared for is, in the past, we used to be the ones going out into the streets with the volunteers, but as a point-in-time admin, there are some people that have to stay back at the shop. And so your job does change. It's not you're in the streets and doing account surveys yourself and then coming back and then adding your surveys along with everyone else's together over the next few days. Your job, ideally, is to provide that monitoring and oversight. And we'll show the command center functionality so you can understand what that is. But come 1 o'clock when the count's over, you get to go to bed. That didn't happen before. We had to wait till the last volunteers came in and, come back to the deployment site, hand in their paper, say they were done, and then clean up and then make the drive home. You can do this work from anywhere. You don't even have to be at the deployment center. It's a strange concept. In the first year we did it, it really felt kind of odd because we're not used to being able to shut down and pick it back up in the morning and everything's there. So just something to be cognizant of as a value add. And then the other side of it is after the point in time count's done, you don't have to be fearful of scheduling a vacation. Like February vacation is, I've got kids, and that would come up. And I was always worried that, am I going to be able to go on vacation, or are they going to still need me to be collating data and getting this out? The next day, you have information to work with. So just something to kind of lean on. And we're going to open up the channels later on to any communities that have used the tech in the past, and I think they can testify to that side of it as far as why they wouldn't go back to paper. That comfort level and that lack of admin burden. So preparing for the count, using Counting Us. So one of the first things we do is, because it's GPS enabled, is HUD has graciously provided us with shapefiles. Shapefiles are basically the regions that are defined by your continuum of care. They do shift over time with mergers. And that's actually something to call out too. Right now, you might be doing point-in-time trend analysis for your region as it stands today. Well, with shapefiles, if we need to recast the region because you just had the county next to you decided to join forces, we can simply change the shapefile, and that changes what pinpoints, what surveys would fall in. If part of your region gets chopped off, you gave up a part of your region to somewhere else, you change the shapefile, that alone can help adjust what surveys were to be included in your trend analysis. So that's called geospatial reporting, that piece of it, and I'll share some more about that in a few. But the point is we have your region boundaries defined. If volunteers were to stray outside those boundaries, we know, because the survey points will show outside it, and they won't get included in your report. There are optional functionalities as far as count team management. We'll show those features as well. So you can not only have registration portals that are customized for you, but you can actually, once people fill out those registration portals, the volunteers will show up in the command center, and you can assign people to pre-established count teams. For the sheltered count, there are several regions out there that don't have 100% participation in HMIS. That would be nice if we all were using it. We have faith-based providers. You have some providers that are using HMIS but not doing a good job of it. You just don't trust their information. Well, you can do the sheltered count using the app as well. So that's something else to be cognizant of. The data that you want. So the way that works is we can customize the surveys, and each survey is tied to that setup key that when you put it in. So point being is we have the core surveys that everyone gets when they download the app. Excuse me. But beyond that, if you have region-specific questions, you don't want to know, for example, in Texas, we asked several questions about whether or not people were homeless as a result of Hurricane Harvey. And the reason for that is they had an uptick in homelessness, and they wanted to be able to account for that. So when it comes time for the NOFA, they can say, yes, our homelessness, was on the rise for last year, but we have a reason for that. So that might be questions you could add. Some questions, people dive deep into use-specific questions, vet-specific questions. Community of origin tends to be a hot one. But the point is, there is the ability to modify surveys. We do have to have the core HUD questions in place if we're going to generate a valid HUD point in time report. But beyond that, we do have some flexibility. The command center this is the kind of the landing page for regional admins, and this is where the data comes in and shows in real time. I can flip over to that. Actually, it's probably a good breaking point to show that command center functionality. So here is my command center view. This is not the same as what you would have, but as you can see, we have representation from around the country. Last year we had 47 communities using our tech. Recently we signed on and welcome several others. North Carolina is a new client. Arkansas is a new client. So we're excited by that. But you can see we have a pretty wide geographic spread. We do have some regions obviously that we're missing. But we've got a good solid mix of urban and rural homelessness. As far as the command center, let me pick the demo region itself. So here's the income. This is more in line with the view that a regional administrator would have. I'm sorry. I could change it this way too. So in this case, it looks like we have the shapefile, the regional shapefile set to this Brockton area of Massachusetts. I'm looking at right. So here we have the surveys as they're coming in. This is all fake data, but so don't worry. And if you're going to follow along at home and submit surveys, please don't use real information unless you're comfortable with your own, because I'm going to be sharing things. So this screen itself, high level, might be one of those areas if you want to have in your deployment centers something showing for people so they can see what's happening. Right now, this demo is set, it's green, which tells me it's in live mode. So we can actually toggle these counts between live and active mode. So if I were to put it back into testing, you'll see this changes, and it's no longer actually in live mode. And this is what you'd start off with. Everything would be in testing mode. You can bang away at it all you want. The surveys that come in, they will not impact your actual point in time count. Okay, so as far as the surveys that do come in, so I tap on responses. You're going to see two different ways to view and manage data. So you're going to see the map view, and typically when you're seeing a map for your region, all these pinpoints will be inside your regional boundaries. Because we have people from all around the country that are using this for demo environment, you're going to see surveys everywhere. All right, so just to be cognizant of that. You know, you'll see some hot spots in here. And if you zoom down, you know, these are basically clusters of surveys. So it gives you an idea of who's really using the demo environment and who is not. So you can kind of drive down even deeper. I kind of find that interesting, actually. So definitely some spread. You know, our technology tends to be used more by communities that have high unsheltered populations, and I think that is pretty indicative from this map in that, you know, it's really your West Coast regions, your southern regions, and your East Coast border regions that have the higher sheltered populations, where there tend to be less unsheltered people. So you can actually work with these surveys either from the map view by clicking on them or going right into the list view. So, and you can apply filters to all this as well. Again, anyone that would like to download the app and submit a survey, you'll see your information here. Then you know that you personally are trained on how to use it. And I've used that step in the trainings too. If you want to know if your account leaders know what they're doing, one of the best ways is to have them submit a survey. If they can do that, then they should be good to go. And really, it shouldn't take them too long. Okay. And as far as submitting a survey, I'm going to go back to the app so you can. So going back to the app itself, and for training purposes, this is fired up from the counting.us URL. It's from Google Chrome. If you hit F12, you can change the skin to whatever you want. So this is a fully responsive design in the sense that it will stretch and shrink as needed depending on the size of the device. You know, but you can also grab screenshots from here pretty easily. You know, but it's something to be aware of if you're doing your own virtual trainings. That you can hit F12 and you can change the skins. If you have some people that are using paper, so let me hit F12, and you had to rekey the information in after the fact, or better yet, you had them have to rekey the information in after the fact, because once you know, I wouldn't own that data collection, put it back on your account team leaders, because once they have to do it once, they'll never do it again, in the sense that they'll realize it's so easy, why do they not just have people use the mobile tech? Once you first download the app, I'm going to go back into this view. It will have you register an account. I've already done that. I can, so if I were to sign out, this is where I would tap register an account. I would fill out my information here, and I hit submit. Now this screen, you want to be using the email address ideally connected with your phone, and definitely your cell phone number. It's not your business phone number. It's not your home line, because that's what the account team leaders would use to connect with you if you weren't filling things out properly, if you strayed outside your area, et cetera. So because I've already registered, I'm just going to tap back. I'm going to log in. Now, I can either change my count, and I'll do this here. If I tap join count, now these are all different regions we're working with. If I tap join count, this is where I put the key demo in. Now, I've already done that, so I don't need to do it again. So I can just tap demo region. And for those of you that have multiple count activities, West Virginia, for example, is on the call. You know, you might have one for the HUD point in time count, and you might want to have another count activity for something, you know, it could be a youth count where the population of who you're actually surveying and the time period is different, and you don't want to commingle the data. You may have different count activities to toggle between here. So once you put up a setup, enter the setup key, that the ones to choose from will be displayed below, just like it's happening here. like disaster response. Ideally, you don't ever have to have that, but we can set up custom surveys and tie them so that the data is isolated from your point in time information. So I'm going to tap demo region for today. This screen is not right here. If your region has the opted to do count team management functionality, then this would be up in front. And basically, it's an extra step to help break down large COCs into smaller parts that might be a little bit more manageable. And the benefit of that is you can have regional administrators within your region, so sub-regional administrators, I guess it would be the better term, or count team leads, watch and monitor data just for their sub area or sub region. So you got, the way we break it down is you've got COCs. So you have your COC because we have geospatial reporting. So you can have one set of keys, like for Virginia, who might be on the line. They have 4 COCs that go out and they do one count activity, but we divide the data using the geospatial logic, after the fact. But here, like large regions like San Diego, Texas balance the state, come to mind, Georgia, West Virginia. Again, these areas where you have this larger geographies, especially balance of state regions, this may help. I think I just saw a question pop up. It was quick. Nicole, was that something about defining what counties are available when signing up? I can't see the chat.
Yeah, the question is there a way to say which counties are in a region when people sign up? People might not know what the regions are since we made them up at like the COC level.
Okay. Actually, that does remind me of, let me show the sign up functionality. So for those, I'm going to use San Diego as an example. So we can pre-establish the regions, and you can call them whatever you might want. In San Diego's registration portal is sandiego.pointintime.info. So this would be the first step if you were to use this functionality. Again, this is an optional feature. You don't need to do it. For some regions, it's overkill. Straight up, it's just, you don't need this level of complexity. But what we're doing is we're asking questions up front that might help establish count teams. Is someone an outreach worker? If they say no, are you comfortable asking questions to people who are experiencing homelessness? Because that would be, if not, then you might be the one behind the scenes that's doing the data collection or handing out care that, maybe have, sometimes they have like care kits, have a different role, be a driver, whatever. And, there's optional, functionality we can add in here as well. But as far as the deployment centers, these are all established within the command center. And again, this is an optional feature. The way we do our pricing, we're trying to be flexible because we know everyone's budgets are different. So base pricing, which really leans on the HUD-ARD formula, includes everything you need to conduct a count. It's the app and the command center. So it's the basic surveys you need, both the Unsheltered Survey as well as the observation tally, as well as a sheltered-based survey. So there's that functionality. The questions are not, for that level are locked down in the sense that it's everything you need to generate the point-in-time report. This additional functionality is above and beyond, and so you'll see that in the pricing section of the contract. And if you don't have a contract and you would like to see one, just email team@simtechsolutions.com, and one of us will get back to you with a contract for your review. But for those that have seen a contract, Everything's described in sections 2.2 through 2.8 because there's literally that many additional functions that you can have, these extra features. So for the volunteer registration piece, it's both the portal side of it, and then it can be integrated with count team management. In this case, it's integrated with count team management because you're dividing up your area into smaller areas. And this is all geographic based. And I'll show that in the command center. So, and then once you enter, and so you have both your primary choice and a secondary deployment area, and some additional information, you hit submit. Now, on the command center side of things, if you were selected, you are designated, and then you're assigned, this is more of a confirmation that you're kind to this. Now I'm choosing for that region. All right. Now I'm ready to get going. I'll go back and I'm gonna go back to the setup piece in a little while. But let me just show the survey piece. Now, once I said get started, I'm presented with a list of surveys that are associated to my count activity. Now, what we have here is for demo purposes. There are a few of these surveys that would not be part of the standard point in time count. For example, disaster response. This is for a demo. We have it here because, unfortunately, we've been seeing more and more natural disasters in our communities. Right now in California, where I am, it's north of us. We have some wildfires going on. Obviously, we had some hurricanes in the last few years. The disaster response survey here was built after, with the people from Houston and Texas balance the state after Hurricane Harvey hit. This app was used to triage over 2,000 evacuees from Harvey. But we used the Unsheltered Survey for that. And some of the questions that are asked for HUD World are not what we need to rapidly triage back into some kind of stable living situation. Things that might be different, for example, on this survey related to, are they a leaseholder or a homeowner? Because FEMA dollars, you can use those for those types of tenants or homeowners that you might not be able to draw from for people that didn't have a lease or a homeowner. So there's different kinds of questions, and that's why we have a tailored response, a tailored survey for that. But again, for the HUD point in time, and when you go live, you wouldn't see that. But just know, if your community was ever impacted by this, that's a zero-cost add-on that we would just turn on, and we would get you rolling. It's not a time for a sales process or anything like that. It's just something that's for peace of mind. If you ever need to have that cover, that protection, we're here for you. So really, what the focus on for the demo purposes would be the observation tally, the unsheltered survey, and the sheltered survey. There are some communities that do vehicle structure observation. In this case, they're counting any like makeshift shelters, vehicles, encampments, and they're applying a extrapolation factor. So they're basically multiplying. For every RV they see that looks like it's not meant for habitation, for every car it looks like someone's living in, there's a multiplier. And some communities have a fair amount of people living in these types of vehicles or structures, and they're not able. And that's also in the contract explained. If you do choose to use this, communities are asked to create their own multipliers. So, and what you're doing is you're taking information, the known information. So you're surveying people using the Unsheltered Survey, and if they say they're in a vehicle or living in a tent or an RV, you're asking how many people live with them or are going to be with them that night. So you're deriving your own multiplier using the survey to apply to the number of vehicles and structures that you see. So maybe you figure out the average is 2.3 people per RV, you count 10 RVs, therefore you have 23 people. Okay, but I'm going to show the Unsheltered Survey. Ideally, this is the one that gets used the most. All depends on your volunteer base, but the accuracy of your data The HUD extrapolation tool itself doesn't let you even use it if you have any less than 20, if it's your surveys, sorry, 20% or more. So it goes, you have to have at least 20% of the surveys of your whole need to be actual surveys versus tallies, or you can't use the extrapolation tool. We want it to be even higher. And one of the benefits of this technology is you're able to survey more people quickly. So ideally, you'll see a shift over time where maybe you were 50-50 between tallies and surveys. And with the use of the technology, you can actually boost that up. I'd like to be able to draw some exact figures between regions, but I don't have those, but something we could think about for the future to show how communities are able to increase their survey rates by modernizing. So if I were to click the Unsheltered Survey here, the very first thing it's going to prompt me for, am I surveying an individual or a household? So if I do say it's a household, there's a few people living together, it's going to prompt me as to how many people are going to be sleeping in that same location on the night of the count. If I say 3, it's going to loop through 3 times, and it's going to ask the surveys repeatedly, but the questions are going to be different based on the person's age. So we use conditional logic to make sure that the surveys are tailored to the person. So if they're saying that they're a veteran, we can ask more questions about their veteran history. If we find out they're a child, if we want to ask more youth questions, we can. If they're adult, we can ask the disabling questions at the end of the survey, veteran status, et cetera. So I'm not going to do this piece right now because it's the same thing 3 times. So I'm just going to hit cancel. But if I tap it again and say individual, this is going to bring up the screen where I can see where I am. This is actually where my offices are. If I needed to adjust, I can just pan the screen and it will change my location. That's pretty close to where I am now, so I'm going to hit next step. If I needed to manually enter address, this function is for that post-count data capture, for people that did the paper surveys. If you're going to do a paper-based survey in a mix, like do a hybrid for year 1, try to capture the nearest street address. And then if you did that, you could enter the address, and it would be able to map it as well. If you don't, you're going to lose out on the functionality, the mapping and the geospatial reporting functionality within the app. So these questions can be removed. It is optional as far as what we have displayed, but because an exercise where you don't even go this far if they've already been interviewed. Before you even walk up to them, you can gauge someone. You can just ask them. But we have these questions right here in the app just to make sure people are asking if they've been surveyed today. So have you been interviewed today for the point in time count? If they say yes, it'll say thank you, have a nice day. It'll prompt the surveyor to say that. But if they say no, then you can move on. Where are you sleeping on the night of the count? Again, for the unsheltered count, ideally you're trying to capture places that are not meant for human habitation. So if they say emergency shelter, again, it's going to stop the survey. Thanks, have a nice day, because you don't want to double count that person. All right. But if I say, I'm staying in a vehicle tonight, goes back. These are questions again that can be removed if you're not using the counts of vehicles and makeshift structures. These optional questions right here. So what type of vehicle? This is the multiplier I was talking about. And get that information. Key demographics, identifiers. In this case, it's all drop downs. It's pretty familiar. Try to make it nice and simple for the surveyor just to tap, tap, tap. Now this age range question, all the questions on the survey are optional with the exception of this one. And the reason being is we use this age range question not only to trigger which questions below get displayed, but on the HUD point in time report, there is no category for people that don't have a known age. So if you didn't capture some sort of age information, that survey we wouldn't have a place for it. So let's just say I'm 18 to 24. If you want more details, date of birth, maybe you're going to use it for data matching. Specific age, you could put that in, but I don't need to. Race is a multi-select because you can be multiracial. All right. And there was just a question for other. Nicole, can you see that question just pop through in the chat?
Yeah, for the member of the household, can we remove the question about where they're sleeping, how long they've been homeless, etc.? Seems like that is already captured by head of household.
So it is repeating the survey 3 times. So in this case, it is the same model of the survey. It is an affirmation, so I'm not, you're basically coming back and yes, it is repeating the question, but the survey logic as it stands does have it repeated. Potentially, we could move it up a level, but the current version, yes, it is repeated, but that also makes sure that they are staying in the same location. So it's a negative as far as extra data collection. It's a positive as far as making sure that they're staying in the same location. It should be treated as a household.
And we have a second question in the chat. Are you able to remove volunteers or the survey is created by specific volunteers?
Absolutely. So that's a command center functionality, and we can show the archive function. Actually, I can jump right over to it. If I wanted to get rid of someone's survey, I can open it, tap archive, and I can put a reason of why I'm archiving it, and that survey is gone. If I wanted to filter out by a specific user, I can do that too. So if we know one person, totally went rogue and shouldn't have been part of this whole thing, and I'm just going to pick on, I don't know, sorry, Dan. I don't know if he actually submitted any surveys, but I can pick on one person and clear out their surveys if I needed to. All right, let me go back and to where I was. And there was one more question. Do you mind reading that one to me from Kayla?
Did we hear you say if we don't submit an age, the survey isn't collected? Also,
no, the survey is still collected.
Be filled in before moving forward in the survey, so making all questions required. Is that a possible?
Okay, good question. So the survey is still collected. It's just, and we do require that one field. So if you tried to not enter an age, it would prompt you to say you need to enter an age. But if we were to take off the requirement, for example, that survey would still be submitted. The issue isn't that, it's just we don't have a place on the HUD point in time report for that data to go. There's information on adults, there's information on children, but there's no place to put information for people where we don't know if they're an adult or a child, and the only way to tell that is to figure out if they're older than 18 or not. Okay. Any other questions while those are coming in?
No more sample questions, or no more questions at the moment.
Okay. All right, so really these next following questions related to chronic homeless history. So we're trying to we're asking the questions that define chronic. We're not just saying, is this person chronic, yes or no. So how many months have they been homeless this time? how many months did you stay in shelter or on the streets during the past 3 years? How many separate times you stayed in shelters or on the streets in the past 3 years? How long have you been in this community? That's not relevant. But basically, you're asking these duration questions plus the questions on disabling condition, and those together, plus knowing that the person's an adult, would trigger the chronic flag in the point time report. These more sensitive questions down below, we did put them down below for that reason. They do have qualifiers on them. So as far as the duration goes, so do you have any substance abuse issues? If I say yes for alcohol abuse, is this a long-term disability? You need both of these to be set to yes in order for it, again, to trigger that chronic flag. So you'll see all these questions that look familiar. All of our survey questions, by the way, were built off the mock surveys on the HUD's website. So Apt Associates created them a couple years ago, and that's what we used for our guidance. And then again, it's currently fleeing from DV, not just DV, so that did change. The veteran status question, and then notes. Notes field, it's, every community uses this a little differently. I've seen some communities put in some identifying characteristics about people. I have seen people, if they had particular engagement with someone, then maybe they have an unmet need. They can mention that here. So it does run the gamut. I personally like taking this as an opportunity to get feedback from people with lived experience on how the system is working and isn't working. So the notes to me are always interesting because sometimes they flush out some of that. As far as offline capabilities, if I didn't have cell phone connection and I tried to submit, it would tell me. I'm not in an area with cell phone connectivity. Would you like to save this as a draft? I would save it. I can show how that works. Otherwise, I can submit it as is. Other times where you might want to save it is if you wanted to fill out the survey later. So for example, some of these questions at the bottom are a little more sensitive. So I might scroll all the way those questions are, and then make eye contact, make that human connection, ask those questions while this is my phone's in my pocket, and then afterwards open up that draft and then complete the questions based on the conversation that we had. So if I were to save as a draft, then I'll seal my draft, and you'll see the number here. I can open that back up. These are all different drafts that I've done. I'm going to open the one right here. Again, I can say I was using that to find out some more information. I could then go through and then I could submit. All right, so I get the success message. I'm good. Go ahead.
We have one question on how household data is shown in the backend data, whether all individuals in the household are shown together or shown individually.
Yeah. So here we have, and again, I can sort these. So this is a household of 3 people living together because the household ID is the same. So that's really the easiest way to do it. If I wanted to work with any one of these records and change it, I would just, again, click on here, open it up, and change what I need to change.
We have another question about the next day or the day of. Is it possible to see how many drafts haven't been submitted? So unfortunately, the ones that are, that's a good question. So the draft functionality, it does come in to be a training issue because drafts are still on your phone. So they're still using your local storage, and until they get submitted to the command center, which maybe you don't have internet connectivity,
then we don't know that they are still on your phone. Now, drafts are not really used that heavily, to be honest. It all depends. Well, it depends on your region. So if you have an area with really poor cell coverage, like everywhere, then you'll see more drafts. But that's going to be a training exercise to say, at the end of the night, or a follow-up email, the next day, thank you for participation. Please make sure you don't have any drafts saved. But no, we don't have a way to read into someone's phone, because it's a connection with the server that's initiated from the phone to the server, not from the server to the phone, especially if their phone's offline. So it's definitely the training issue. That's why we have a little red number next to the draft to try to call attention to that. And you don't want to auto-submit drafts either, or auto-submit all drafts, because of that, what I was discussing. There are times when you want to, a volunteer may want to revisit a survey later, and is not ready to submit that draft. So we don't want to have it leave the phone before that volunteer is ready to have it leave the phone.
We also have another question about if people have to go through drafts individually to submit, or if they can submit multiple drafts at the same time from their phones.
They do have to go through one at a time, but it's pretty quick. You open it, you scroll to the bottom, hit submit. And again, if you think about it, most surveys engagements might take 15, 20 minutes. The person's not going to likely have more than 5 drafts. So I wouldn't expect it. So yes, they're individual. And again, it's because you want to make sure those drafts are ready to go. So we don't want to automatically send them when they get back into cell phone range, because that might not be the reason why they decide to save them as drafts. And while we're running a little low on time, I did want to share that if one of the functions that people do seem to really like is this ability to run reports by subgeography. So you have the ability to break up the area into counties, zip codes, and cities. And if I were to apply one of these filters, by selecting these regions, I can run a report, the HUD point in time report, to include just the data pertaining to this region. All right. Now, the region we have set up for demo purposes isn't a great one because there's nothing in here. But it would, if I clicked on an area, it would bring the responses down. If I create a report too, I can do it, the unsheltered report, the sheltered combined. As far as shelters go, you would be setting up all your shelters in this project setup. So you can adding projects, the organizations, and the projects, and giving a project type. And it's really that simple. So the sheltered survey is exactly the same as the unsheltered survey, except you're not asking where you're sleeping tonight, and you're going to have this drop down of the organizations and projects as far as when you go to data capture for that. I think at this point, we're getting things through the chat. If anyone has any questions that wants to speak, you can dial *6 on your phone if you want to ask the questions out loud. Do into the chat. You're welcome to do so. So again, it's *6. If you have anything to share, if you've been a previous user of the tech and you want to share some of your experience, by all means, chime in. The only reason why we muted everyone at the beginning was just to kind of avoid the background noise. So as far as while we're doing that, I'm just going to, and yes, by the way, this call is being recorded, and we will send out a link for that as well. And I did want to share too, one last key piece on responses. If you go to generate that report, I think it's probably what that report looks like. And again, the report itself is the HUD point in time report that can be downloaded as a PDF. But all this, for initial view, all of these are drill downs. So if I wanted to see more details, for example, maybe I have a young adult committee or a white CP community. Well, here are my 60 adults that were found on the count. I click on that, it's going to give me a list of 60. and have their details. We're trying to address chronic homelessness in our community. You know, who do we have that's chronically homeless? Here's our list of 51. Oh, we've got BASH vouchers. You know, who can we find? So to be able to use that, to click on that, would be good. Not only this, you can download this as a PDF, but you can also export a results file. So the results file itself is just the key numbers from all, you know, from the report. So these are all your key numbers. And it's literally like the Sage output. It's going to have just this high-level data. But the benefit of it is it's going to allow you to combine your data with other data from other data sources. So say, for example, your HMIS vendor, you work with HMIS and they have the ability to generate a point-in-time report. They can either support this results file format, so this results exchange format, or if they don't know how to do that or they're not there yet, we have a tool that can do it for you. So you're going to run all your point-in-time reports through HMIS, and you would open up this tool and key in the information, and it would generate that format. If you happen to use our homeless data, our warehouse, basically, it's homelessdata.com, we can produce that file as well. Now, in addition to that, so you've got the ability to do it for the mobile app through the command center for both the shelters that don't use HMIS and then the unsheltered. So you can get the same format there. And then in addition, we have a tool that's just for DV. So that tool is free. You don't have to work with us to use that tool. It's available down here. And it's, you know, in that sense, if you're not working with us, you know, don't expect the same level of support as if you are, please. You know, we try to focus our time and energies on the people, the communities we're working with. But it's available, and it's an Excel-based tool that would, the idea is you would send this out to your DV providers. They would fill out the tool in their own secure environments, have it hosted and password protected, you know, ideally hosted in an encrypted environment. You know, they fill it out. They don't need to put names and identify names in there at all, as long as they know this is person one, person two, et cetera. And they, after they're done, they don't send the tool back to you. They click export results, and they send the results back to you. So those results for DV can then be combined with all of your results from your different data sources. And currently, when the communities we work with, they can send us to the help desk. We do have a tool to aggregate results, but it's a little bit of time and energy to understand. So we may work with vendors, communities to say, here's the tool, you can do it on your own. You know, really it depends. Sometimes it's easier just to send it to our help desk, and then we'll create the finished report for you. Point being is, you know, for the point in time, you're going to have different data sources that need to be brought together, and we try to make it a little easier for you. We do have other things available, your dashboards. If you go here, so all our resources are on our page here. So you've got SimTech resources, you've got the HUD resources, we've got instructional videos, a whole slew of FAQs. You know, see all the communities that use this tech and how they used it in the news stories. And then you get more information about our experience here. You know, so all this is available. But what I wanted to share is at the very bottom of here, and maybe it's a little too hidden, is your dashboards. So in here is you know, we take all the HUD point in time and COC information, and we make it available for consumption. So you can use this to inform your communities about your local trends. So if you select your state, you know, right now I'm in California, and then you can choose your region. You can go through it at your leisure. I'm not going to spend more time on it because I want to leave some time for questions, but just want to let you know that this is available. Nicole, do we have questions that have come in since?
We do. We have one about visibility. So can the people who are entering information through Counting Us see the command center? Is one of the questions that came up.
Not unless they're given administrative access. So the notion is there's definitely roles. So you've got your volunteer role, which is a one-way post to the command center, and then you've got administrators behind the scenes that can work with all this.
Another question related to volunteer accounts and counting us. Someone was asking, are multiple volunteers able to enter data through counting us with different volunteer accounts?
So everyone gets their own account. There's users that get assigned. Everyone's account tied to their email account. So you can have, as long as everyone has the email address, they have a unique account to participate and download the app and volunteer. I think that's where they're going. Does that sound like?
Then we have another question about pricing. How does pricing differ for different regions?
Okay, so good question. It's not an easy pricing formula because we try to make it so it's the first thing we look at is the HUD annual renewal demand. That seems to be the easiest way to say help size a community up. So pricing is generally it is based on that. It's also what we also factor in is your unsheltered population. So we look at the last year's point in time breakdown between sheltered and unsheltered, and the pricing is adjusted to discount the pricing for communities that have less of an unsheltered population. So because it's a kind of a complex pricing formula that looks at the confluence of ARD, the HUD annual renewal demand, and your unsheltered breakdown, anyone that wants pricing, again, I would just encourage an email. You can either go right to the website and fill out this contact us form, and we'll get back to you with pricing and a sample contract. You're going to mention your region, and we'll be able to get back to you quickly with a price. But no, it's not the same price for everyone because larger communities have more volunteers and more support needs. Any other questions?
That's all the questions we've seen in the chat. Oh wait, there's one more. What's required to add additional questions, and can multiple responses be identified for individual questions?
Yeah, so all the questions that can be added. So again, it's in the contract, there is an ability to customize your surveys. That's something that has to be set up by us. We work with you on defining those questions. We share the core surveys as they stand, and you tell us what you want changed or what you want added. But as far as what's available, as far as responses, you can do radios, you can do drop downs, multi-selectors, anything that's basic. If you're ever used to using SurveyMonkey or something of those tools, it's going to be that type of functionality. You can have free text fields, date pickers, etc. So you do have flexibility on what gets added. And we can also support conditional logic. So, the idea of conditional logic is you're not going to ask questions that don't pertain to a person. So if they're male, you're not going to ask them if they're pregnant, kind of thing. So that doesn't make sense.
That's all the questions we've had in the chat.
Okay. Well, this is not going to be the last. We will record this webinar. We really appreciate everyone taking the time. Again, if anyone wants to unmute and is rather talk, we can do that. We can stay on for a couple of minutes. But I would encourage you reaching out, using the Contact Us form, and we will follow up directly with you. If you have more questions, we will have another webinar, and we will have office hours. So with that said, thank you everyone for your time. We appreciate it, and we hope to work with you for your 2020 count. All right. Thanks, HIB Tech team. We'll reconvene in a few.